In 1948, I have the date here, the 15th of May, isn't it? Yes, 15th of May, 48 was the Declaration of Independence. And Palestinians called the day after the Nakba. I'm sure many of you know that word, the disaster, when their world disintegrated, because of course the Zionists said that Palestine was a people without land, and that they were a land without people, I beg your pardon. Palestine was a land without people, and here they were a people without land, so it was absolutely made. But in fact, there are a few million people there very well who were then largely driven out. Okay. And the first thing that I understood, that I should have understood a great deal before, but which I never paid attention to, was that the language of the new state was Hebrew. Now, the sister here, could you give her a seat there? Is there a seat there? Yes. Good. I didn't really understand that. As with everything about Zionism, because I was concentrating on other things, it took me a while to appreciate what that meant. The language of Jewish people in the diaspora was largely the language of whatever country they went to. In the Middle East, it was Arabic. In Spain or Constantinople, it was often Spanish. You know, in Italy, it was Italian. The only way you know, when you go to Italy, you say so, and I say, well, I'm Jewish. And they say, oh yes, Sergio, that's the Italian for me. Sergio Bologna is Jewish. Now, Sergio Bologna was probably, raised in a church, and some generations before. But the fact is, if in Italy, your name is the name of a city, it means you have Jewish ancestry. So they were telling me, oh yes, there's a lot of us who are Jewish, who have never had any connection with Judaism at all. But in the areas where Jewish people have come and have not been there very long, as in the United States, for example, the language of Jewish people was Yiddish. There was a Jewish theater, there was a Jewish literature, there was a Jewish language. It was Yiddish. Okay? And when Israel was formed and they took Hebrew as their language, there was something else that they were telling you besides a linguistic fact. They were telling you that the state of Israel had broken entirely with the traditions that Jewish people had adopted. Okay? It didn't mean only, like my grandmother, lighting the candles on Friday night. That was certainly Jewish, and it was certainly widespread. And after the '67 war, it became more widespread. They didn't become more religious, they just became more Zionist. But the tradition that they no longer wanted to be part of was the tradition of Jewish struggle. It was the tradition of my father and of my mother. It was the tradition of any kind of organization that you went to which was part of social change. There would be a disproportionate number of Jewish people. Every single one, every socialist organization, every kind of anti-racist organization, etc. My husband always used to say that he knew why Hitler had persecuted the Jews. He said, because you all are too internationalist, and he felt threatened by you. It was an offhand remark, and I don't want to pin that on him, and that's not why I mention it. I mention it, however, because although it was an offhand remark, it has a profound truth. We have not so much been caught up in the particular nationalisms that have held back people in many countries. And it is my belief that it is the nationalism in the United States which arises from the power of the US, and particularly from the military power of the US, which has prevented people from breaking with the American state as they should have done a long time ago. There is this feeling that to leave the US identity, to not think of yourself as a really true blue American, somehow is to lose a piece of power that you want to maintain. And I believe strongly that until that is broken, until you no longer think of yourself as identified by that state, this country will not move in the direction it absolutely has to in order to break the horrendous shackles that are being welded more firmly every day. When you look at Israel today and you hear what Israelis who are anti-Zionist have to say, they tell you some really interesting things. First of all, they tell you that Israel uses the history, bypassing the revolutionary history, going back further in time, to make a claim on the land. Palestine was once, I don't even know how they do it, you all will know better than I, was once Jewish land and we're reclaiming it. Well, on that basis we better get out and give Manhattan to the Indians, because it certainly was there, and much more recently than Palestine was owned by the Hebrews or was the land of the Hebrews. The other thing they tell you is that you must not mention the names of Rosa Luxemburg, Emma Goldman, or Leon Trotsky, and there is a problem also with Karl Marx. These are Jews, it's true, you can't deny it, so don't mention it. Okay? In other words, the whole tradition that we have fought for as Jewish people, that I feel very strongly about, in spite of the fact that my Judaism, not very powerful. I like what Virginia Woolf said, as a woman I have no country. As a woman, I want no country. As a woman, my country is the whole world. I believe that that makes perfect sense. Also, I would think that somebody should say, as a man, I want, etc. As a human being, what do we need countries for? As a human being, I don't want to be divided from other human beings with these borders and this loyalty and these wars. Okay? But the tradition, had to be broken in order for Israel to rebuild itself on another basis. Now, I want briefly to speak about that basis. Not all that has been known and gathered as information of all the crimes of the Israeli state. I merely want to speak about the fact that I gather that the figures are these: 5.5 million Jews in Israel, 1 million Palestinians inside, and I think it's 1.5 million in Gaza, 3 million in the West Bank, at least 7 million in the diaspora, that is, in exile in one way or another. Those are some really heavy figures.